You really thought he found you by accident? The words hit her harder than the gunfire outside. In that instant, Elena understood what it meant to be both wanted and deceived. The man who'd saved her life might have been the one who set her fate in motion. Power, love, and betrayal all tangled in the shadows of New York's quietest wars. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. It was close to midnight when Elena Ward wiped down the counter for the third time. Her shift had started before sunset. Her back had stopped complaining hours ago now. It just hummed with a quiet ache she'd grown used to. Elena moved between the tables with slow precision, picking up half-empty plates, stacking cups, pretending not to listen. When she reached table 7, her rag brushed against something soft. A wallet. Inside were neat stacks of bills, all hundreds enough to cover her rent for a year. No driver's license. No credit cards. Only a single card made of matte black paper, the name embossed in silver, Adrian Moretti, the Velvet Rose Club, Manhattan. For a long minute, she just stood there listening to the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. Her mind flicked through every unpaid bill taped to her fridge door, the medicine she hadn't bought for weeks. Her hand trembled once, then steadied. She shut the wallet and exhaled. "It's not mine," she whispered, though no one was near enough to hear. The phone behind the register stuck a little when she lifted the receiver. The number printed on the card looked simple, too few digits for comfort. She dialed anyway. It rang once before a voice answered, low and rough, the kind that belonged to someone used to being obeyed. "Stay there." That was all. She lowered the receiver. Her heartbeat felt too loud in the stillness. 15 minutes later, another car arrived, sleek, black, silent. 3 men stepped out. 2 waited by the door. The one in the middle walked in like he didn't need to look around to know who had called. Adrian Moretti wasn't what she'd pictured. No flash, no swagger, just a steadiness that pulled the noise out of the air. His suit looked expensive, but it was the way he carried himself that made her throat tighten. She held out the wallet. "I found this on the table," she said. He took it without checking. Their fingers brushed. His skin was cool, almost detached from warmth. "You didn't take anything," he said. It wasn't a question. Elena shook her head. "It isn't mine." Something in his expression shifted, a hint of surprise, maybe amusement. His eyes studied her face for a beat too long. "You work here?" "Yes. Do you like it?" "It pays what it can." He nodded as if she'd passed some quiet test, then placed another card on the counter. "The Velvet Rose could use someone like you." Before she could reply, he was already at the door. The bell gave a small jingle as they left. The trucker stirred, rubbing his eyes. "Who was that?" Elena kept looking at the door. "No idea." When the clock hit 12, she flipped the sign to closed and locked up. Rain began to fall in thin lines. She pulled her coat close, feeling the new card in her pocket. The Velvet Rose Club. In small print below, opportunity comes once. She stood under the awning watching where the black car had gone. 3 days later, the phone rang just after dawn. "This is the Velvet Rose," a calm voice said. "Mr. Moretti would like you to come in for an interview." She almost said no. The diner was closing, rent was late, and her last loaf of bread was half gone. Still, she said yes. The train to Manhattan rattled through gray tunnels. She turned the card over in her hand until her thumb went numb. The club stood on a clean, silent street. No sign, just a polished brass handle. Men in suits, women moving without hurry. She caught her reflection in the glass-plain dress-worn shoes, a jacket that didn't quite fit, and took a breath before stepping farther in. A woman at the front desk smiled without warmth and handed her a form. "Mr. Moretti will see you shortly." She didn't wait long. He appeared the same way he had at the diner, quietly, yet every head seemed to turn when he passed. There was nothing overtly charming about him. It was the steadiness, the sense that he never asked permission to exist in a room. "Miss Ward." He said her name as if testing how it sounded. She nodded, not sure whether to thank him or apologize for being there. "You found something that didn't belong to you," he said, "and returned it." "That's what people do," she answered. "Not always." He studied her a moment longer, then gestured toward the small office behind him. Inside, the furniture looked too perfect, like no one had ever sat long enough to leave a mark. "I need someone trustworthy," he said. "You need an opportunity. This place can be difficult, but the pay is fair." She hesitated. What would I be doing? Serving the private rooms. Discretion matters more than skill. There was no pitch, no charm, just an exchange of risk for survival. She said she'd think about it, but he gave her a staff badge before she finished speaking. That evening, she changed into the black dress and low heels they provided, fastening the small silver rose at her collar. A manager showed her how to move quietly, how not to linger near certain doors. The others worked with practiced grace, their smiles stopping short of their eyes. By nightfall, the club filled with sound, clinking glass, quiet talk, the scent of money heavier than perfume. Elena moved from table to table, learning when to appear and when to fade. Every gesture felt measured. Across the room, Adrian sat with three men in dark suits. They spoke low, the kind of talk that didn't need to be heard. One man made a joke. No one laughed. Adrian nodded once, his hand still on the table. A waiter passing by murmured, "That's when the real conversation happens." Elena didn't ask. She kept working, but her eyes found him again more than once. He had a stillness that made people quiet around him. When her shift ended, she stacked her tray and washed her hands. A faint scent of lemon clung to her skin. A guard walking past nodded. "First day feels like it." He half smiled. "Everyone says that." A glass broke somewhere beyond the wall, then silence. The music started again, softer. She looked once toward the private room, where Adrian still sat, the air holding its breath for something unnamed. She told herself she'd get used to it, then hung her apron and left knowing few ever did. That night ran long. A private party upstairs had kept the staff late. When the last guest left, Elena moved through the quiet rooms, collecting glasses, wiping tables. At the final suite, the door stood half open. Two men were still there, voices low, and even like people who'd argued too often to raise them anymore. "The shipment arrives tomorrow," one said. "If he moves it again, we're finished." "The problem isn't the shipment," the other replied. "It's the rat. Someone's been feeding him information." Elena froze. The cloth in her hand stayed pressed against the table. They didn't notice her. One of them exhaled sharply. He should have dealt with it already. Maybe he's getting soft. "Soft men don't last here," the first answered. The men headed for the door. Elena stepped into the hall, pretending to fix a vase. They passed without a glance. When the elevator doors shut, she waited a beat, then returned to the room. A faint smell of cigar lingered. On a chair lay a folded napkin with an embroidered crest, a serpent coiled around a crown. Not from the club. She brushed the fabric once, then slipped it into her apron. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. She worked on habit, answering when spoken to, flinching at every noise. At home, she left the napkin on the table. It caught the early light, quiet but insistent. She folded it once and hid it between the pages of an old book. The next night, she tried to act normal. Conversations felt edged, the kind people stopped when she neared. The manager handed her a tray. "Take this upstairs." Adrian looked up when she entered. Sleeves, rolled papers spread across the desk. He didn't seem surprised to see her. "Miss Ward," he said, "how's the new job treating you?" She set down the tray, still learning. He nodded, though his eyes were somewhere else. "Did you notice anything unusual last night?" Her throat went dry. No. The word came out too quickly. He caught it, she could tell. Silence stretched between them until she almost wished he'd accuse her outright. "Good," he said finally. "If something seems off, tell me. But be careful what you repeat." He leaned back in the chair. "And don't trust anyone here." He paused, letting her meet his gaze. "Including me." The words stayed with her. She left the office, heartbeat uneven, unsure if it was a warning or a test. The rest of the shift dragged. Conversations turned coded gestures, sharp smiles thin. She kept her hands busy, but her mind circled back to the napkin hidden at home, and the word rat whispered behind a door. When it was over, she stepped onto the staff balcony. Manhattan sprawled beneath her, restless lights scattered like broken glass. She leaned on the railing, trying to quiet her thoughts. A door slammed somewhere, followed by laughter that rang too loud. She closed her eyes, breathing through the noise. A breeze brushed her hair. She opened her eyes to the city below, streets stretching endlessly like veins under glass. Then came the crash of glass, a shout, and the night split open. Elena had been clearing a table when the first body hit the counter. Screams broke loose. She dropped her tray. It spun across the floor. Chairs scraped, people ran. A man shoved past his arm, catching her shoulder. She fell, hard palms stinging. A hand caught her wrist, steady and strong. Adrian pulled her up. "Move!" he said, voice low. He pushed her behind him as another man lunged a flash of metal in his hand. Adrian stepped forward, swift, precise, and the man hit the floor, groaning. Out the back, Adrian ordered. Elena's heart pounded as he guided her through the kitchen, past cooks frozen mid-motion. The door slammed shut behind them. Are you hurt? He asked. She shook her head, still trying to catch her breath. Who were they? Not your concern. He scanned the alley, jaw tight. They won't come back tonight. He didn't explain, just led her to a car waiting at the curb. The driver opened the door. She wanted to argue, to pretend this was still just a job, but fear and fatigue left her quiet. They drove without a word. The city slipped past in a blur. When the car stopped, she saw an apartment tower far from the club. This is mine, he said. You'll stay until things settle. I can't. You can, he cut in. It's safer. The apartment was plain, no luxury, just a wide room, the smell of coffee papers scattered on a desk. He pointed to a door. There's food. Lock it if you want. She nodded, too tired to argue. After a shower and borrowed clothes, she lay on the couch and drifted in and out of sleep. A soft noise woke her. Light spilled from the study. Adrian sat at the desk, elbows on his knees, holding a photograph. You should rest, she said. Can't. She stepped closer. Two young men smiled from the picture. Your brother. He turned it face down. Not anymore. I'm sorry. So am I. He rubbed his face. I trusted the wrong man. Been paying for it since. He spoke quietly, words steady but tired. You ever make a choice that keeps echoing long after it's done? Elena sat opposite him. Everyone does, she said. Mine just echo quieter. Their eyes met briefly. The silence between them settled, neither reaching for it nor breaking it. Adrian leaned back, staring past her. The clock ticked. She watched the photo on the table, his scarred hand resting beside it. She wanted to ask what it had cost him to survive, but didn't. They stayed there, not in comfort, but in the strange ease of being seen. A siren wailed somewhere far away. He rose to close the window. Their reflections caught on the glass. Hers weary, his guarded, two people quietly broken in their own ways. He didn't ask her to leave, and she didn't. The stillness between them held until it no longer needed to. By the next week, people had stopped pretending not to stare. When Elena walked through the staff hallway, voices dropped. Laughter stopped. The rumor came fast that the boss had taken a special interest in her. Some called her Miss Moretti, some with envy, others with spite. She ignored it, though. Silence rarely protects anyone. During cleanup one night, a busboy leaned on the counter, watching her stack glasses. Must be nice, he said, skipping the line straight to the top floor. I don't know what you're talking about, she replied. Sure. He grinned, sharp and thin. Just saying not everyone gets invited to the boss's apartment after hours. Her hand tightened around a glass. Be careful with your words. Relax, he said, raising his palms in mock surrender. We all know you got protection. He brushed past her on his way out, his shoulder hitting hers a little too hard. The staff kept their distance after that. Orders came late, notes got lost, and every shift turned into a quiet test. She told no one, not even Adrian. He rarely appeared during working hours, and when he did, people fell silent until he left. That night she finished later than usual. The club had emptied brooms scraping faintly in the background. The parking lot lay dim and near silent. She pulled her coat close and headed for her car. Footsteps followed. Slow at first, then matching her stride. She turned. A shape moved by the fence. Who's there? No answer. Her grip tightened around her keys. She picked up her pace. Didn't think the boss's girl would walk alone, a voice drawled. Reggie. He stepped closer, grin curling. What's he paying you for, huh? Must be something worth keeping. Go home, Reggie. He ignored her. Or maybe you like the attention. Headlights cut across the lot. A black car stopped hard enough to squeal. Adrian stepped out, jacket unbuttoned, expression steady. He didn't speak, just looked at Reggie. The silence between them shrank the space. Reggie's grin faltered. He muttered something and backed away. When Adrian didn't move, he turned and ran. Elena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Adrian's eyes shifted to her. You all right? Yes. How did you? You were followed. One of my men called me. You had me watched. I keep an eye on my people. She wanted to argue, but her hand still shook. He opened the car door. Get in. I'll take you home. They drove quietly. The city slid past in smears of light. She sat with her hands clasped, glancing at him. His face was calm, too calm for someone who just frightened a man into running. "You shouldn't walk alone at night," he said. "I've been walking alone for years." He looked over. "Do you always think that's strength? It's habit." "Not control," he said. "Protection. They're different." He stopped in front of her building. "Stay in for a few days. I'll take care of it." Before she could answer, he was out of the car, opening her door. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once and left. She watched the tail lights fade, the engine's hum thinning into the dark. Fear ebbed, leaving behind a pulse she couldn't name. Turning toward the door, her reflection flickered faintly on the glass. What unsettled her most wasn't what had almost happened. It was realizing she no longer wanted to walk alone. The velvet rose looked untouched. Tables gleamed. Music murmured, guests smiled as if nothing had ever happened. That afternoon, Adrian crossed her path in the hallway. "A small dispute," he said lightly, as if talking about a late delivery rather than a fight that could have left someone bleeding. Handled now. No questions left her lips. Curiosity was dangerous here. Yet something in her had shifted, a quiet pull toward the man who had stepped from the dark to stand between her and harm. Near closing time, he found her wiping the counter. "Walk with me," he said. It wasn't an order this time, more of a quiet invitation. They moved through the main floor where a few late customers lingered over their drinks. Adrian stopped near one of the private tables. "What do you see?" he asked. She followed his gaze. A man in a gray suit sat with two others, smiling, but his hand gripped his glass too tightly. "He's nervous," she said. "Why, he keeps looking toward the door. Maybe expecting someone." Adrian nodded once. "Good. The eyes give away what the mouth hides. Watch long enough and people tell you who they are without meaning to." He turned to her, half smiling. "In this place, survival depends on noticing what others miss." She leaned on the table, thinking. "And what do you notice when you look at me?" He didn't answer right away. "That you're careful," he said finally. "Maybe too careful." "That's not a bad thing. It's useful," he admitted. "But it costs you peace." The words hung between them, soft but heavy. She changed the subject. "You ever think about leaving all this behind?" He gave a short laugh, low and humorless. "Every morning. But this world doesn't let go easy. It's like gravity, you can escape for a while, but you'll fall back if you stop fighting." She wanted to ask why he kept fighting, but instead said, "I drink my coffee black because milk costs extra at the diner." He looked at her, puzzled. She shrugged. "You said noticing small things keeps people alive. I just figured you might want to know one about me." For the first time, his expression softened fully. "Noted." They spent the next hour walking through the quiet club, speaking of ordinary things. The way Manhattan never truly slept, the street vendors, who sold better food than most restaurants, the strange calm that came right before rain. The conversation moved easily without edges. When it was time for her to leave, he handed her a folded envelope. "Your pay, and a little extra. Consider it. Gratitude." "I don't need take it," he said. "I owe you that much." She slipped it into her bag. "Then we're even." "Not even," he replied, but closer. The night was warmer than usual. She walked toward the bus stop, the sound of her shoes tapping faintly against the pavement. Cars passed, headlights glinting off shallow puddles. Halfway down the street, that prickle along her neck returned the sense of being watched. She slowed, glanced toward the alley by the club. Nothing moved yet, the stillness clung too tightly. Her pace quickened. The bus stop was close now. A car door shut somewhere behind her. She didn't turn. An envelope lay on the kitchen table the next morning. No name or return address, just hers written neatly on the front. For a moment she thought it might be from Adrian. Then she opened it. A single line typed in black ink. "You're not the only one he saved." Her fingers chilled. She read it twice, folded it again, slower than she meant to. No signature, no hint of who sent it, just that one sentence burning through her thoughts. Waves broke against the rocks below the property. The sea stretched wide, but she felt trapped by salt and quiet. Adrian had moved her to the coastal house 2 nights earlier, saying it was safer until things settled. He never said what that meant, only that Marco Andrelli was stirring trouble again. That name alone had made his jaw harden. Guards rotated day and night, and she hadn't passed the gate since. He was in the study leaning over a spread of papers, phone pressed to his ear. His tone stayed steady, but carried an edge that made her stop at the door. When he noticed her, he ended the call. "You should stay," he said. "It isn't safe right now." "I've been here for 3 days," she replied. "Safe isn't the same as living." He sighed, rubbing a hand at the back of his neck. "It's temporary. Everything with you is temporary." That got his attention. His gaze lifted, steady and unreadable. "What's that supposed to mean? I don't know," she said, though the words came from somewhere deeper. "You disappear, you say nothing, and I'm supposed to trust that it's for my own good. Maybe I'm just another problem you're fixing." He stepped closer. "You think that's what this is? I think I don't know what this is." The quiet stretched until the seas pounding filled the space between them. He opened his mouth, stopped, then said only, "I can't explain right now. Not until it's over." That was worse than a lie. She turned away so he wouldn't see her jaw tremble. When he left for a meeting, she searched for her phone. The only number that still connected anywhere was his. She tried calling Grace anyway. The call died before the first ring. She tried again. Nothing. The walls seemed to close in the house, too still. From the window, she watched a car pass through the gate, 2 men, not Adrian, guards or something else. The letter remained on the table. "You're not the only one he's saved. Saved by him from what and at what cost. Maybe others had trusted him too. Maybe they hadn't survived it." By evening, the sky turned to steel. She wandered the halls until she found a locked door at the corridor's end. The handle didn't move. Footsteps came from the stairwell, and she stepped back before she was caught. Dinner came and went. Adrian didn't return. The guards outside murmured into radios, their words clipped, tense. Something was happening, and she was the last to know. The sea roared louder against the cliffs. She stood by the window, arms crossed, watching headlights flicker far down the road. Then past midnight, an engine cut through the wind. The gate groaned open. Adrian walked in, shirt streaked with dirt and blood, one sleeve torn. He dropped his keys on the table and sank into a chair, breathing unevenly. She stepped forward. "What happened?" No answer. His eyes were somewhere far away. He leaned back, exhaled a slow breath that carried more defeat than pain. The clock ticked. The tide climbed higher. She couldn't tell if the man before her was the one who'd sworn to protect her or a stranger wearing his face. The smell of iron filled the room. Adrian sat slumped, one hand pressed to his side. The blood had dried dark across his shirt. Elena fetched a basin of water, tore a towel in half, and returned without a word. When she rolled up his sleeve, he flinched but didn't pull away. His skin burned beneath her fingers. "It's not deep," she murmured, though the wound along his ribs said otherwise. He gave a short breath that might have been a laugh. "You'd make a terrible liar." "Hold still," she murmured, cleaning the cut. The blood bloomed red again, a stubborn reminder of whatever had happened out there. Minutes passed like that, her tending him, breathing through the pain. Only when she began to bandage him did he speak. "Marco Andrelli," he said, the name rough on his tongue, "killed my brother." Her hands paused. The room seemed to narrow around the words. "I've been chasing him for 3 years," he continued. "Every lead, every deal, every man who thought he could hide him. That's why this isn't over. Not until I find what's left of the truth." Elena looked up. His face had changed, not softer, not colder, but stripped of the mask he always wore. And tonight she asked, "I found one of his men." He leaned back, closing his eyes. "Found, not kept. He won't talk." She tightened the bandage. "You should have told me. I wanted to keep you out of it." "You didn't." "I know." He opened his eyes, then meeting her gaze with something close to apology. "They know who you are now. Your face, your name. That makes you a target." Her stomach turned cold. "So what am I supposed to do, hide here until it's over?" "Yes." She shook her head. "You don't get to decide that." He looked at her, weary but steady. "You think I enjoy this? You think I want to be the kind of man who locks people away for their safety? Then stop. I can't." She sat back on her heels, claw still in her hands. "I hate being kept in the dark." He exhaled, voice rough. "So do I. But sometimes it's the only way anyone survives long enough to see daylight again." Something in that answer cracked the distance between them. She saw the fatigue, the quiet loneliness buried under his restraint. Maybe he saw the same in her, the anger, the fear, the refusal to break. Neither spoke. The tide beat against the shore, steady as breathing. When she reached to set aside the towel, his fingers caught her wrist light, unsure. "I didn't mean for any of this," he said. "Not the club, not you. Not this life I can't seem to crawl out of." Her voice came out thin. "Then what do you want from me?" He hesitated, then said, "I just don't want to lose another person because of what I am." The words dissolved her anger. She placed her hand over his. It was awkward, unplanned, but it steadied them both. He looked down at their joined hands, then back at her. The tension between them loosened, shifting into something fragile. For a while they stayed like that. The bandage at his ribs darkened her fingers, brushing near it, tracing the rise of his breath. When his thumb grazed her wrist, it wasn't command, it was fear. She didn't pull away. The house had gone still, except for the soft ticking of a clock and the sea hissing against stone. After a moment, she stood to clear the basin. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed somewhere low. The weight between them wasn't lighter, but it was honest now. At the doorway, his voice stopped her. "Thank you." She nodded once and left. In the sink, the water ran pink, then clear. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Maybe him, maybe just the house breathing again. She didn't look back. The tide climbed higher, the walls holding their quiet. By morning, Adrian was gone. His jacket hung over the chair, but the car was missing, the space around it hollow. She checked each room before realizing he hadn't left a word. An unfamiliar man arrived instead, a tall figure in a gray suit carrying a leather folder under his arm. "Ms. Ward," he asked, voice clipped, but polite. "My name is Vincent. I'm Mr. Moretti's attorney." Her pulse jumped. "Is he all right?" "He's occupied," Vincent said carefully. "He asked me to deliver this to you. He said only one thing. If something happens, she'll know when to open it." The folder was heavier than it looked. Elena stared at it long after he left, trying to decide if she should wait. Waiting, she realized, had never helped anyone. She opened it. The folder held photographs, notes, and names in neat columns. At the top, Angelo Moretti, deceased. Below, a list of people tied to the case: officers, lawyers, witnesses, partners. Her eyes stopped on one: Anthony Russo, Tony's Grill, Brooklyn, her old boss. The memories came fast: late shifts, Tony counting cash long after closing the night she'd found a wallet and called the number written inside. Adrian's name. It hit her then their lives hadn't crossed by chance. The same world that had taken Adrian's brother had been sitting behind her diner counter all along. She hadn't been pulled into this. She'd already been standing at its edge. The thought left her dizzy. She folded the papers, shoved them into her bag, and went to the window. Guards still paced the grounds, but their presence felt less like safety and more like walls. If Adrian was gone, waiting meant becoming someone's pawn again. She wouldn't. At dusk, she slipped through the back door during a shift change. No one stopped her. The road curved inland, bordered by untrimmed hedges and empty driveways. She walked until the first bus stop appeared, then boarded a city route. The file in her bag pulsed against her side, steady as a heartbeat. She opened it again. A note beside Tony's name read, "Linked to Andrelli Imports 2018. So that was it. Tony, with his quiet warnings and cash payments, had worked for Marco. She wasn't chasing courage, just tired of running. When the bus reached the industrial district, she stepped off. Warehouses lined the dock, gray against the low sky. Somewhere beyond them, Marco's network stretched unseen. She followed the sound of water against metal until the pier narrowed ahead. A voice came from behind. "You've come far for someone who doesn't belong here." Two men stepped out from the side of a shipping container. The taller one grinned. "The boss said you might show up." "I just want to talk to him," she said. "That's convenient," the man replied. "He wants to talk to you too." A van waited nearby. They took her bag, pushed her in, and slammed the door. The drive was rough and silent, except for the hum of the tires. When it stopped, they pulled her into cool, salt-stained air. Waves hit the rocks below. The corridor ahead smelled of fuel and damp stone. Marco Andrelli stood by a wooden table, sleeves rolled, smile sharp but empty. "So he said," the girl who turned Moretti's head. "What do you want answers?" he said. "I've been wondering what he saw in you. You're not from his world or mine." But Tony Russo was. He turned coward. "Then you show up beside Moretti. Tell me, luck or fate?" Her stomach twisted. Marco's grin deepened. Now you see it, don't you? The way it circles back. That's why he chose you, because you were already part of my story. Elena shook her head, but the room tilted. His smile faded. Men like him never save anyone without a reason. Waves crashed against the cliffs, the sound too steady, too cruel. Marco turned away, leaving her in the half-light, the truth closing around her, like a net she'd stepped into long before. The door burst open before he could finish. The guards froze. Adrian stood there, pale, exhausted eyes fixed on Marco, like a man finally facing what he'd spent years trying to bury. "Let her go," Adrian said. His voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. Marco leaned back against the table, feigning ease. Always the hero, he drawled. "You're late, Moretti. I was just telling her how sentimental you become. You used to understand that feelings only get people killed." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Where is she in this?" "In the middle where you put her," Marco said. "Same place Angelo was when you decided to play savior." The name hit the room like a weapon. Elena saw Adrian flinch the faintest crack in his stillness. Marco smiled at it. "You remember, don't you? The last thing your brother said before he bled out. Something about trust." Adrian moved first. The shot came so fast it startled everyone, one echo then another shattering the bulb overhead. Shards rained down. Men shouted, scrambled for cover. Elena ducked behind a crate as gunfire split the air. Something whistled past her cheek, a piece of glass cutting a shallow line. The sting came seconds later. She pressed a hand to it, feeling the warmth of her own blood, the chaos blurring around her. Through the noise, she saw Adrian close the distance to Marco, his movements quick and sure until another gun flared. A bullet tore across Adrian's shoulder, spinning him sideways. He stumbled but didn't fall. "Adrian!" she shouted. He turned toward the sound of her voice just as another shot cracked. Without thinking, he crossed the space and threw himself in front of her. The force drove them both to the ground. For a few seconds, all she could hear was the ring in her ears. When she opened her eyes, Adrian was on top of her, breathing hard, his weight half shielding, half crushing. "Can you move?" he asked. She nodded, pushing him upright. He winced, but his hand found hers. They stumbled toward the side door while the gunfire continued behind them. They reached an abandoned warehouse near the pier. Its walls rusted and half collapsed. She pulled him down behind an overturned crate. He tried to brush her off, but she grabbed his wrist. "Stop," she said. "You're bleeding too much." He laughed under his breath, a short, painful sound. "You should have stayed away." "I tried," she said, tearing the hem of her sleeve to make a bandage. Her hands shook, but she worked quickly. "You don't get to say that now." He watched her tie the fabric around his arm, his breath shallow. "I told myself I could protect you from this," he murmured. "That's what men like me do. We build walls around what we care about." "Then why tear them down?" she asked, meeting his eyes. "Because you walked through them anyway." Her throat tightened. "I shouldn't have met you, but you did." His voice softened, raw in a way she'd never heard. "And now we both have to live with that." She pressed harder on his wound. His hand found hers again, grip unsteady but sure. The blood soaked through the fabric, warm against her palm. Adrian leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes. "You could still walk away," he said quietly. "I won't," she answered. He didn't answer, only reached for her hand, fingers brushing the dried blood. They stayed like that until the noise from the docks faded. Her pulse slowed, but her thoughts kept circling. Marco's words still cut through her head. The fight had begun long before her. She'd only stepped into it. Adrian's breathing steadied. The bandage had darkened. "Rest," she said. He nodded. "Just a minute." Her hand stayed on his shoulder, feeling the slight tremor there. Two tired people holding what little ground they had left. A phone buzzed somewhere nearby. Neither moved. When dawn came thin and colorless, she helped him into Vincent's car. The silence between them felt like something that wouldn't break, only settle. Vincent drove without asking questions. Only when they reached a safe house outside the city did he finally speak. "There's something you both need to know," he said, hands still on the wheel. "One of your men sold information to Marco." Adrian's head lifted. "Who? I'm not sure yet." Vincent cut the engine and turned toward him. "But whoever it is, they've been feeding him our movements for weeks. That's how he knew where to find her." He nodded toward Elena. Adrian's stare hardened. "You have proof?" "Not yet. but I traced a call from one of your phones. It came from inside your network. That's convenient, Adrian said flatly. You bring me bad news with no name attached. Vincent's eyes narrowed. I could say the same to you. Every time something goes wrong, you disappear, and we're expected to clean the blood off the floor. Careful, Adrian murmured. Elena stepped between them before the air grew any sharper. Stop. You're on the same side. Vincent gave her a tired look. That's the problem, Ms. Ward. Around here, that phrase doesn't mean much. He got out of the car and shut the door a little too hard. The sound lingered. Adrian moved stiffly, lowering himself into a chair. He's been with me 10 years. If he wanted me dead, I'd already be gone. Elena leaned against the counter. Then who I don't know, he said. That's what makes it dangerous. He rubbed his face, the motion slow worn. She almost reached out, but stopped when his eyes lifted. After he went to shower, she wandered into the study. Papers covered the desk, red markings everywhere. A small phone sat beside a folder labeled Angelo, personal. Curiosity pulsed through her. She pressed play, static, then a man's voice. Angelo's. If you're hearing this, it means things went wrong. Marco isn't the only one. Someone gave him what he needed. I think Adrian knows, but he won't admit it. He's too close. Her stomach twisted. Angelo continued softer now. Tell him I don't blame him. He didn't mean to lead them to me. But the moment he trusted the wrong hand, everything fell apart. The recording clicked off. Elena stared at the phone. Adrian hadn't killed his brother, but part of it traced back to him. The door opened. She jumped. Adrian stood there, towel around his neck. What are you doing? Nothing, she said too quickly, setting the phone down. He studied her, then picked up a map. Vincent's tracking the leak. Marco thinks we're cornered. Are we not yet? He pointed to the docks. Tomorrow night we hit his shipment. It's where he keeps his records. If we prove he's been buying cops, we finish this. And after he traced the map's edge, then we walk away. You and me. The certainty sounded fragile, more wish than plan. She nodded. All right. He folded the map. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be long. When he left, she exhaled, eyes drifting to the phone, small, quiet, full of truth she couldn't say aloud. Through the window, Vincent stood by the car, speaking into his phone, his face unreadable as thunder rolled in the distance. Elena leaned her forehead to the glass. The city kept moving, cars, lights, people living lives untouched by any of this. For a second, she wished she could trade places with them. Footsteps crossed behind her. Adrian's reflection appeared beside hers, faint and tired. When this is over, he said, I'll take you somewhere the noise can't reach. She didn't answer. He waited, then left. The quiet thickened, uncertain. Only when his shadow disappeared did she breathe again. The meeting was held in a dim warehouse by the river. Men arrived with guards and briefcases carrying the same heavy calm of people who'd buried too many allies. Elena followed Adrian in pulse, steady by force. She wasn't meant to be there, but had stopped believing in safety from the sidelines. The long table was full. Marco sat at the far end, smirking. I thought you'd lost your nerve, he said. Adrian didn't reply, just sat and gestured for Vincent to stand behind him. Chairs scraped. Marco's gaze shifted. You brought the girl. She seems loyal. I wonder if she knows what she's standing in. Adrian's tone stayed level. We're here for business. That's what I said. Marco leaned back. But business runs on truth. When did you forget how to tell it? Elena saw the flicker under Adrian's calm. Marco's words were bait, twisting guilt into power. The file in her bag pressed against her side, the phone, the recordings she hadn't shared. The discussion dragged Moneyland loyalty, all circling old scars. When Marco spoke Angelo's name, his voice turned almost gentle. Too young for this world, he said. But then so was the man who got him killed. Adrian rose halfway before Vincent's hand stopped him. Elena's body moved before her mind caught up. She reached into her bag, pressed the button on the phone, and placed it on the table. The recording began with a burst of static. Then Angelo's voice filled the silence. If you're hearing this, it means things went wrong. Marco isn't the only one. Someone gave him what he needed. I think Adrian knows, but he won't admit it. He's too close. The words cut through the room like a blade. Marco froze, his smile slipping. Angelo's voice cut through the room. He didn't mean to lead them to me, But the moment he trusted the wrong hand, everything fell apart. The room erupted. Men shouted, chairs scraped, one of Marco's guards reached for his weapon before another shoved him back. Vincent stepped forward. That tape came from Angelo's phone. It proves who leaked the information and who killed him. Every head turned toward Marco. He gave a short, bitter laugh. You think that changes anything? His hand moved to his gun, but three others were faster. The first shot broke the silence, followed by the clatter of more. Elena ducked under the table. When the noise stopped, Marco's men were down, and Marco himself had slipped through the back. Adrian steadied her. You hurt? She shook her head, grabbing the cracked phone from the floor. Rain mixed with oil in the air, as sirens wailed somewhere distant. Adrian barked orders to his men, then turned, but she was already walking away. Elena, wait. She didn't. The street opened ahead, slick with rain. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from knowing too much. The recording in her pocket could clear Adrian's name or destroy it. She crossed the road, no one stopping her. Under a flickering sign, she paused, breath clouding in the cold. Her reflection in a shop window barely resembled the waitress from Tony's Grill. That woman had waited. This one had chosen. Shouts echoed behind her. She didn't turn. Her footsteps splashed through puddles, folding into the rhythm of the city. The night pressed close, heavy but alive, carrying her forward. News spread fast. Marco Andrelli was caught trying to flee across the river. His men scattered or surrendered. The papers called it the end of an era. Adrian's name filled the headlines, the man who restored balance. At the Velvet Rose, laughter returned, but without warmth. The place had survived, though every face bore the weight of what it cost. Elena moved through the club like a visitor. She hadn't spoken to Adrian since that night. When they passed, he gave her a brief nod, the polite gesture of strangers, pretending they'd never shared a war. Vincent handled the business now. He's rebuilding, he told her once. That's what men like him do after they win. She wanted to ask what winning even meant, but didn't. One night long after the club closed, she stopped at Adrian's office. The hallway hummed faintly with city noise. She turned the handle. The room smelled of dust and paper. Files lay stacked on the desk. A folder near the edge caught her eye. Not curiosity, just habit. She opened it. Her face stared back from a photograph, standing by a grocery store in the rain holding a paper bag. Another showed her locking up the diner. A third reading on a park bench. Each one dated months before the wallet. Underneath a page of Adrian's handwriting, "The wallet will bring her to me." The words blurred. Every path that had led her here, every coincidence had been mapped out by him. Even her honesty had been a step in his design. She set the folder down carefully, afraid to break the stillness. The door opened. Adrian stood there, the light behind him catching the scar at his temple. His gaze shifted from the folder to her face. Neither moved. Street sounds drifted faintly through the window. Cars' distant laughter, a world unaware of what this kind of victory cost. Elena's throat tightened. She set the paper straight on the desk as if order could erase it. He stepped forward, then stopped. The space between them filled with something heavier than words. He looked like a man facing his own reflection. How long, she asked. Long enough. No defense followed. The wind brushed against the glass. Her reflection stared back, older, sharper. Adrian stayed where he was. The quiet settled over them like dust waiting to fall. She left before dawn, no bag, no plan. The guards didn't stop her. Rain soaked through her coat as she reached the main road. She didn't look back. By morning, she was in Brooklyn at the same cracked door she'd returned to after late shifts. The key still turned. The place smelled of detergent and dust. A table weighted bills tucked beneath a chipped mug. Everything sat where it always had, as if time had only paused when she left. She sat on the bed listening to the pipes hum through the walls. Her body remembered every corner, every night she'd stared at the ceiling, wishing for change. Life felt different now, just heavier, like hope had turned to something solid she couldn't name. Through the thin wall, a news anchor's voice carried Marco Andrelli sentenced to life without parole. Sources confirmed the Moretti organization remains intact under Adrian Moretti's leadership. She turned on her own screen. Adrian appeared signing papers under bright lights, expression, blank eyes fixed downward while cameras flashed. When the clip ended, the screen went dark, reflecting her own face until the rain outside drowned the static. Days blurred. She brewed tea she didn't drink, bought bread she forgot to eat. The city moved on without her. A knock came at the door. Then again, softer. She opened it to find Adrian, no driver, no car waiting, just him, rain flattening his hair, umbrella in hand. "Elena," he said. She didn't answer. He took a breath. "You know now?" "Yes." His gaze flickered like a man bracing for impact. From the start it was a plan. "I won't insult you by denying it." Her voice came out steady. "The wallet, the photos. You watched me before you ever spoke to me." He nodded once. "I did." Silence pooled between them, but everything after he went on quietly wasn't part of the plan. Elena studied his face, the exhaustion in it, the way his shoulders no longer carried arrogance, but a kind of surrender. "You could have told me," she said. "I wanted to. Then it became too late to tell the truth without losing you." She almost laughed, but it caught in her throat. "And now you've lost me anyway." He didn't argue. The rain slid off the edge of the umbrella, forming a small river at his feet. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said finally. "I just needed you to hear it from me." When he reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. The warmth of his skin startled her, real alive, nothing like the cold betrayal she wanted to remember. His thumb brushed her wrist and her pulse answered. He leaned closer, rain clinging to his coat. His lips touched her forehead, not a claim or apology, just a goodbye left unspoken. Her eyes stayed open. His hand slipped away. They stood in the rain, two people who had once been refuge, and now were only memory. No tears came. Grief had settled too deep for that. He stepped back, umbrella tilted toward her, though the rain still reached him. "Take care of yourself," he said. She nodded. His footsteps faded into the rain. She watched until he was gone. The room felt smaller when she returned. The kettle waited on the stove. She emptied it, filled it again, set it to boil. Steam rose, curling upward, thin and uncertain. City lights blurred against the glass. She stayed there until dawn edged across the rooftops, soft and pale, promising nothing but its own return. Vincent called 3 weeks later, his voice even as ever, asking if she could meet. The cafe sat on a quiet Manhattan corner, the kind where talk disappears under the hum of milk frothers and low jazz. She arrived early and waited. Vincent entered, soon after, suit, crisp eyes, tired. He didn't bother with small talk. A slim envelope slid across the table toward her. "I thought you should have this," he said. It held a copy of a handwritten note, short and uneven, as if written in haste. "I chose her because she was real. I wanted to believe that somewhere in this world someone could exist untouched by power." The signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Vincent waited for her reaction, but none came. The noise of the cafe faded until she could only hear her own breath. "He wrote it the night before everything collapsed," Vincent said quietly. "You weren't a pawn, Elena." Maybe it started that way, but it didn't end like that. She folded the paper carefully, slipping it back into the envelope. "Maybe that makes it worse," she said. He didn't argue. "Whatever you decide, he'll understand." When she left the cafe, the sky pressed low and gray, making the city feel smaller. The envelope rested in her coat pocket as she walked without direction. By evening, her steps led her back to a building she'd sworn never to enter again. The office was still faintly scented with old paper and leather. Adrian stood by the window as if waiting. "I wondered how long it would take," he said. "You followed me, watched me. You made sure I found that wallet." "Yes. You think truth can begin with a lie?" He looked down. "No, but sometimes it's the only way to reach it." She placed the envelope on his desk. "Maybe, but it doesn't make it right." For once his face was bare, no control, no armor. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. I came to return what's yours." His jaw tightened. "You read it." "Yes, and I believe you meant it. But belief isn't trust." He nodded slightly as if she'd confirmed something he already knew. The quiet that followed wasn't sharp anymore, just tired. Love could survive lies, but not the truth. At the door, he spoke again. "Elena, I never wanted to own you. I just didn't know how to stop needing you." She didn't turn. "Maybe that's what we both have to learn." The latch clicked behind her. The hallway smelled faintly of polish and paper, remnants of a world too heavy to keep carrying. Dusk lay over the city, light fading between buildings. She paused at the street wind catching her hair. This time she didn't search the crowd. No goodbye. Just space, quiet, clean, final. A fragile peace settled, the kind that comes only after a storm. She crossed the street, her steps steady, carrying only what was hers to keep. The bell above the door chimed when she turned the key. The sound marked the start of her mornings, now steady and grounding. She flipped the sign to open, straightened the shelves, watered the ferns, wiped the counter, though it didn't need it. The bookstore was small, tucked between a bakery and a laundromat on a quiet Long Island street. Salt sometimes drifted in from the sea. People came for old novels, travel guides, or to linger. She learned their names and small habits: the teacher who loved mysteries, the teen who read poetry at lunch, the old man who bought the same almanac every spring. Life moved gently here. There was comfort in repetition, in things that didn't demand too much from her heart. Some mornings, while brewing coffee in the back room, she caught herself humming without thinking. Not joy exactly, just something lighter than quiet. The mail came near noon, bills, catalogs, a postcard in one envelope, with no return address. Her name was written neatly in an unfamiliar hand. She opened it carefully. It held a photograph, her standing before Tony's grill, hair tied back, half smiling mid-turn. On the back in faint ink, "You made me remember who I was." A.M. Her thumb traced the letters. The hum of the fan faded. Time thinned around her. She folded the photo once and tucked it between the pages of The Old Man and the Sea. It fit there, quiet and sure. The bell over the door chimed. A woman entered, shaking rain from her coat. "Do you have anything by Carson McCullers, second shelf on the right?" Elena reached for the book, passed it over. "That's the one." When the woman paid, Elena wrapped it in brown paper, tying the twine neatly. "Her stories stay with you," she said. After the customer left, the shop settled into its soft rhythm again. The clock ticked. She poured coffee, leaned against the shelf, and watched the street. Wind stirred the branches, scattering a few leaves. Beyond the rooftops, the sea moved steady as breath. She thought of the photograph of him and felt only warmth, like a melody remembered without ache. The door opened. Another customer smiled in greeting. Elena set down her cup and returned the smile, looking for something in particular. By evening, the shop was still. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and stood by the window. The scent of the sea drifted through a crack. She breathed it in, slow and even. Peace, she thought, wasn't forgetting or forgiving. It was living with what stayed and what didn't. She closed her notebook, tucked a curl behind her ear, slipped on her coat. The day faded quietly behind her, leaving only the small, steady rhythm of a life, finally her own. Sometimes healing doesn't come from forgiveness or revenge. It comes from the quiet courage to keep living after the truth has stripped everything bare. Elena's journey reminds us that peace isn't about erasing the past. It's about carrying it gently, learning to breathe again without the weight of what was lost. Maybe that's how redemption begins, in the smallest moments we choose to stay kind, even after the storm.